All right. Okay, we're at 11:01, so let's get started. Again, I've already said welcome a few times, but welcome one more time to everyone who is joining us for At Home at UWaterloo, addressing your graduate housing questions. So my name is Carrie Huber, and I'm going to be your moderator today. I'm the manager of graduate marketing and recruitment for graduate studies and postdoctoral affairs. You've probably already had some engagement with through the application and offer process. So I'm going to be moderating today, and we are also very lucky to be joined by two of our campus housing experts. We have Jill Williamson, who is our housing services advisor, and we have Maya D'Alessio, who is our coordinator of data and occupancy. So they will be coming on throughout the presentation to share information with you. And then both of them will be available in the Q&A. We'll be able to ask questions and have some conversation. So before we get started, I'd just like to recognize that the University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldimand Tract, which is the land promised to the Six Nations, which includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. So our active work towards reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and that's all coordinated through our Office of Indigenous Relations. So just a couple quick housekeeping notes before we get underway. So today we have a presentation format followed by a live Q&A. I mentioned in the emails that the presentation will be recorded and posted on our website in the future students section. But you will also, if you've registered for this, you will get an email with a link to the presentation as well if there's anything you want to go over and review. If you have any questions, so as I mentioned, Q&A will be a big part of this. Please use the Q&A function that's located at the bottom of your screen. We do have my colleague Graham working in the background, and myself as well will be looking through and flagging some of your questions to answer live. We will try and answer some of them in the background as we go, but depending, we might not be able to get to all of them, but we will try and address as many questions as we can during the live Q&A. But we do ask that if you have really specific situations that are very personal to you or might only apply to you, we'll have an email address. You can follow up with Jill. You can follow up with Maya if you have some of those really specific questions, because we want to be able to provide information that can sort of be helpful to everyone. Yeah, so any links to my colleague Graham, anytime we mention a link or outside information or info on the website, that will be shared in the chat so you can access it. And then when we post this webinar on the website, we'll also have underneath the recording, we'll have all of the links so you can get to everything that we've talked about. All right, so just a quick little overview about living in Kitchener-Waterloo. I know we have some people joining us locally, but I know we also have some people joining us from around the world. So the University of Waterloo, we're located in Southern Ontario, in the city of Waterloo, and it's about 100 kilometers to the west of Toronto. So Toronto, again, the major center, big airport. There's a good amount of transit options to Toronto, a GO train, there's bus service. The airport in Toronto is very easily accessible. It's sort of on the end here towards Waterloo. It's about an hour drive. But we also have an airport here in Waterloo Region that services many major cities in Canada, as well as some tropical areas as well. So Waterloo Region is really centrally located and really well connected to a lot of areas around us. But campus itself, as I mentioned, is located in the city of Waterloo, which is a short distance from uptown Waterloo, which is sort of the main area of Waterloo, and super easily accessed by public transportation. We have our ION light rail transit. It's a rapid transit line. We have bus service, lots of ways that you can quickly and easily get to campus. Graham's going to share, we have our interactive campus map that you can use to have a look and check out where things are. And you can also take our graduate studies self-guided tour to get to know your way around campus and sort of some of the hotspots that are really relevant for grad students here on campus. So Waterloo Region is made up of the cities of Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge. And we have some surrounding townships in the countryside. And that all makes up the region of Waterloo. There's just over 600,000 residents in the area. So it's a pretty big metropolitan center. And what's really neat about Waterloo region is it's a great mix of urban and rural. So you have everything, all big city amenities that you would have in Kitchener and Waterloo, but then we're also super close to really nice countryside, and you can really sort of get out into the sort of more rural areas. So really nice mix of urban and rural here. Also, you probably know Waterloo is a huge tech startup ecosystem, lots of big tech companies. We're really known for innovation, obviously here at the university, but also in the region of Waterloo itself. We're home to some of Canada's and the world's largest tech companies like Google, Shopify. We have innovation hubs and think tanks, all that kind of thing. So really a really vibrant area. But we also have a really vibrant food scene, farmers markets, craft breweries, awesome live music venues. We have a professional symphony orchestra. As I said, awesome restaurants. If you want to sort of follow along and see some of the behind the scenes and some of the restaurants and stuff we have, there's some really great Instagram accounts you can follow. One of them is called Curated KW. Graham will pop their handle in the chat. Another one is called KW Famous. So they both share like cool restaurants and fun things to do, stuff going on in the community. Really awesome accounts if you just want to peruse and like see some of the stuff we have going on and some things you can take advantage of here. So tons of stuff. We also have lots of outdoor amenities. I said we're a really great mix of urban and rural. So the region is really heavily invested in bicycling infrastructure. So we have a lot of separated bike lanes that are being built, good bike routes, bike paths to get around. So if you want to be able to bike to the university, you can do that easily and safely. We even have a local ski hill. So lots of outdoor things you can do as well. And if you want to get a better idea of campus and the city itself, again, you can check out our grad studies campus tour. And we also have a video tour of the region for grad students. And I'll get Graham to pop those in the chat for us as well. Another important thing to review, speaking sort of the region and living here, you want to make sure you review our study and living costs page. So Graham will pop that in the chat. So on our study and living cost page, you might have come across it already, but you can find a link to tuition and incidental fees. There's also a budget calculator for grad students, and we have a chart of estimated costs for things like off-campus housing, utilities, groceries, personal expenses, and other expenses as well. Think like winter clothes, computers, all that kind of thing. So that's really important that you want to make sure you're really looking at the whole picture when you're trying to figure out what your costs are going to be. So that study and living cost page will be a good starting point as a guide as you're putting together your budget so that you don't run into any surprises. All right, and now after that brief intro, I will turn it over to Maya to tell us all about our on-campus housing for graduate students.
Hello, hello. Just a little bit of context about me. You may have already received an email from me if you have contacted our housing office about grad or family housing. I'm generally the person who's going to respond. So hello, if we haven't met yet. There are a couple of different options for graduate students for living on campus. There are two areas of our Columbia Lake Village community. We have a part called CLV, or Columbia Lake Village South, and a part called CLV North. Those are run through campus housing. Some of you are already going to be familiar with the fact that there are some university colleges. We call those the Affiliated and Federated Institutions of Waterloo. If you see that acronym anywhere, that's what that means. And one of them, United College, does have some graduate housing. It is very limited, so we're not going to talk about it too much today. I'm from the campus housing operation, but you can see the information here on this screen under United College. So if you're interested, you can absolutely reach out to them, check out their webpage to learn more. The majority of beds for graduate students on campus are in CLV South and CLV North. They're two side-by-side townhouse complexes. And if you think of campus, I like to think of campus as like a big rectangle that is kind of like bounded by University, Columbia, Westmount, and Albert. So within that, that's our main campus. CLV is just located on the northwest corner. So you're really on campus, but just off. It's less than a 15 to 20-minute walk to different parts of campus, depending on where you're going to. And really conveniently, right outside the front of the CLB complex is 2 bus stops. And those buses are kind of constantly going down Columbia into the university through the Ring Road and back up again. So you really have a convenient way to get to the heart of campus through your bus pass. And all graduate students will have a bus pass as part of your student fees. So that makes that very accessible. We can go to the next slide, if you don't mind. Thank you. Okay, so a really important thing to understand is that there's 2 different housing options for graduate students. One is what we call graduate housing, and that is the type of housing where you are an individual student looking for housing, and you may get placed into a multi-student unit with other students. The other type of housing is for student families. So that would be if I was coming to do my degree and I had a spouse or a partner and or maybe some dependents, I would apply for a family house, and that's a very different process. So I'm going to talk about those 2 things separately, and it can be easy to confuse them, but they are different areas of campus, they're different contract types, they're different ways to apply. So within the CLB complex, we have the north and we have the south. There are graduate housing units in both of those areas, and they're a little bit different. So in the south, we have 4-bedroom townhouses that share a bathroom. In the north, we have 2-bedroom townhouses that share like a 1.5 bathroom. So depending on like the number of people you want to live with, the price you want to pay, you have some different options. And when you apply for graduate housing, you can tell us which you prefer. We don't always have what you prefer, but you can tell us what your preference is. The contracts for graduate housing are 4-month terms that align with the academic terms. So right now, I'm in the process of sending offers to graduate students for the spring term, and they'll move in on May 1st, and their contract will go until the end of August. In terms of being eligible to live on campus, you absolutely must be a full-time registered student. To live in graduate housing, you have to be full-time registered in a graduate program. The townhouses for graduate students, they do come furnished. So they come with kind of all the essentials, a bed, a dresser, a desk for studying. There's a kitchen that has appliances, but you'll need to bring your own like cutlery and cooking utensils and stuff like that. Your fees for housing are going to be paid very similar to your tuition fees. So they're going to get paid once right before the term starts, and it is in alignment with the fee arrange deadline. So if you're looking at coming into campus for the fall term, I believe fees arranged is usually about mid-August. So just to get a sense of how the timing on that is going to work. There's a lot of things that are really convenient about living on campus. In the CLB community, we have a community center, and that is open from 8 a.m. till midnight every day. It's an area that can be used for socializing. There's a TV in there. There's some like games. There'll be social events there. And really importantly, there's also a manned front desk. So there's always people around that you can go talk to. We also have Dons in our graduate housing community. So they're there to support you and your experience. They're always happy to help, happy to chat. The fees that you pay for graduate housing are going to include all of your utilities and high-speed internet as well. There's laundry facilities within this shared community center. And there's all sorts of social activities going on aimed at building a community among graduate students. That's probably one of, I think, the nicest things about living in our graduate community is you'll connect with other graduate students. There are also optional meal plans. But just a note, if you're interested in that, there is no eatery area in the Columbia Lake Village complex. You'd have to use the eateries on the main campus. So that's kind of a very brief overview of graduate housing. And now I'm going to switch lanes and talk about student family housing. So our student family units are only in CLB North. They're an entire townhouse. So where with the graduate housing, if you were assigned to a 2-bedroom townhouse, you would get placed with another roommate. In the CLB North family housing, the whole unit is yours for your family. These contracts are actually 12-month, year-long contracts. and our contract year goes from August 1st to July 31st. So if, for example, you end up getting an offer like in October, your offer will go until the end of July the next year, and then you'll have an option to renew for the next contract year. Something that's nice about student family housing is you always have the option to give 2 months notice to terminate your contract if you're graduating or you're moving for some other reason. Similarly to graduate housing, you must be full-time enrolled to be eligible to live in family housing, and you need to continue to be full-time enrolled to be able to renew your contract. There are additional eligibility criteria to live in family housing. You can check this more on our website, and I really recommend that you make sure you're familiar with it before applying. But generally, like, you have to be in a common law relationship or married to a partner and have dependents, or you could be a single person with dependents as well. If you ever have any questions about that, reach out to us at Housing. We're always happy to answer questions. The family housing units themselves are unfurnished, so there will be no furniture. However, there are appliances in the kitchens. The fee status and structure is different. You're going to pay monthly, more like an off-campus rental. And all the amenities are the same though. So you still have access to the dawns, you still have access to our front desk, all of the community events. So yeah, these are kind of just a very brief overview. There's so much more information on our websites, and our graduate and family teams have done a great job of having like lengthy, like frequently asked questions sections. So I highly recommend going and looking around in there.
I think Graham has put some of that info in. I also see, sorry to jump in, Maya, but there's been some questions around, I know you talked about how to pay fees, but what the fees are and where people can find those, and how the fees are sort of different between the family housing and grad housing. And so I don't know how you can speak a little bit to it if you want, but I know Graham, you may have already put those links for fees in the chat, so you guys can check them out.
Yeah, I highly recommend going to the website because it's going to have the most up-to-date information. The fees are slightly different between graduate housing within CLV North and CLV South. There's just like slightly different fees because the style of housing is slightly different. And then family housing is a consistent monthly fee. So it's very different. Definitely check the website. I'm just going to do a quick scroll to see. Aha. Okay. I'm starting to see some questions about applications and like offers. So let's go to our next slide and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Actually, we'll get there in a minute. I've already talked to some of these points, but some of them are important to understand. So it's a very different vibe than living off campus. This is like a curated community only of students. So it's generally safer, quieter, and cleaner than you might experience elsewhere. I already mentioned that all of your living costs are included other than food. We're close to the university, which is wonderful. And this is key if you've already lived in a landlord situation. We are a reliable landlord. We're not going to dodge your calls. And if you have maintenance issues, there's a very simple, easy way for you to get in touch with us to request support. And we are really here to support you guys. Again, I mentioned this already, but the fantastic support of the Dons, they help create a community. They're throwing social events. And on the family side, we also have events that are specifically targeted towards students with families. So we have kid-friendly events, and we try to encourage kids of families living with us to be able to connect with each other as well. Okay, let's go on because I know the hot topic is going to be applications and when to expect offers. So the applications, as I mentioned, are different for graduate housing to student family housing. So applications for fall for graduate housing are already open. If you haven't submitted an application already, I highly recommend that you do as soon as you can. As soon as you have submitted an application to UW and they've registered some sort of decision on that, you will be able to access the housing application. You can find that through the Apply Now page, which I see Graham has just shared. Thank you, Graham. You will have to have set up what's called your Duo, which is a two-factor authentication system. You can Google that. There's a really great informational page from UW on how to do that. It's about internet security. But once you've got that set up, you'll be able to get into the application. So the way graduate housing works in terms of vacancies, we have about 400 vacancies, or I should say units at any given time for graduate students. And offers are sent on first come, first served basis, with the exception that students who already live with us will get the first chance to choose to renew their contract for the next term. So right now, I'm looking at filling the graduate housing communities for the spring. And in very early May, those students will have the opportunity to tell us if they plan to stay for fall. Once I hear back from them, then we know how many vacancies we have to fill with new incoming students for the fall term. So the hard thing that I have to share, and it is really hard right now, there's a lot of demand for housing, is that I probably already have, I think, 350 applications for the fall for new incoming students. And I anticipate we're probably only going to have about 100 vacancies. That doesn't mean don't apply, because by the time we're sending offers, sometimes students will have found somewhere else to live. So I'm not only going to end up sending offers to the first 100 people, but just to give you a sense, and Jill is going to talk soon about off-campus housing, it's really good to make sure you're covering all your bases. So in terms of when to expect to hear from us, if you're going to get an offer, those will start going out in mid-May. I anticipate probably about May 18th, May 20th, the first round of offers will go out, and then we'll keep sending offers on a rolling basis. So what I'll do is I'll send offers to students for all of the spaces I have. They'll have about a week to respond. And let's say half of those students decline. Well, then I have another 50 set of rooms that I can offer out. So we're going to keep doing that through the summer. So if you end up in a situation where we're getting closer and closer to the fall term and you still haven't found housing, I really recommend reaching out to us, because sometimes we have people who, had to defer coming or ended up withdrawing from the university. So sometimes we do have vacancies pop up. So send us a message if you haven't heard anything and we're getting close to the term. In terms of on the application, if you've already submitted an application, you still have the opportunity to tell us through the application portal if you have a preferred roommate, and you can manage all of that through the application portal. That's kind of everything about applying to graduate housing. On the other side,
I just wanted to jump in with a really quick note. You said this at the beginning of this slide, but about when they can actually apply, and you said it, they have to have some kind of offer decision. So I just wanted to reinforce that. So you have to have accepted your offer and gone through, and that's when you'll get your Waterloo your ID and email, and then set up the duo. So I know we have had some questions before of like, oh, I can't do the application, I don't have the duo security thing set up. And that may be because you haven't actually accepted your offer yet and sort of gone through those steps. So that if you do have an offer, it's you have to accept and show that you're intending to come here, and then you'll be able to complete those steps. So just wanted to make sure that was super clear.
Yeah, and something to clarify there as well is a lot of students who are coming for grad school, I find, will end up with conditional admissions, because you're still finishing maybe your previous degree at your current institution. That's not a problem. As long as you've accepted that conditional admission, you will still be able to access the application.
Great point.
My kind of like insider information is to try, if you don't get in with us in the fall, try again in the winter and try again in the spring. Spring is the easiest term to get in with us because we tend to have vacancies. Like right now, I still probably have 50 or 60 rooms available for the spring term. And once you start living with us, then you can stay with us as long as you want and as long as you continue to be a student. So that's kind of the like how to get into the system.
That's a very hot tip.
Yeah.
Very hot tip. Yeah.
Was there anything else you think I should respond to before I go talk to family housing?
No, that's okay. You can move on to family housing. We'll get to some of the other questions later.
Okay, so family housing, completely different world. You can apply at any time, and offers for student family housing can get sent at any time. Because the way it works is we send offers for students for a contract term of August to July, but those students might graduate at any point and choose to leave. And so once they've left, I'm going to go and send an offer to the next student on the wait list. So the way it works for family housing is you submit an application once, you're going to stay on a wait list continually until you get to the top, and it might take more than a year to get an offer. Our current kind of processing time for that is about a year and a half right now. I'm kind of sending offers for students to move in this summer who've been on the wait list since last January, so January of 2022. You will get an email every term if you're on the wait list to confirm that you want to stay on the wait list. So if you don't take action on that, you will get removed from the wait list, and other people below you on the wait list will move up further towards the top. Just to give you a sense, we have 82 family units, and I have about 190 students on the wait list right now. And I do get a lot of questions from students asking like, oh, I'm number 15 on the wait list right now. Like, when do you think I'll get an offer? Unfortunately, it's so hard to predict because it's up to the current residents who live with us when they decide to leave. So that is a little harder, but we will always strive to give at least 2 to 3 months notice of when you could move in, so that you have time to figure out if your current housing is wrapping up or what you're going to do in between. That's kind of all I have to say on like broad strokes about the applications.
All right, that sounds good. I know we still, we do have some more questions, and I think that's helpful. We can sort of repeat them at the end and go into some more specific situations maybe that might be helpful for everyone.
Yeah, and I'll pop in and start typing some answers to some of the more specific questions as well, guys, so hang tight.
Yeah, Maya, feel free. I have flagged some to answer live, but if you want to answer some of those in the background, feel free. So now we will pass it over to Jill to talk to us about some of our off-campus housing resources and support that we can offer. And just some of the, she'll go over lots of details. Go for it, Jill.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everyone. So as was said, I'm going to be talking about off-campus housing. I just want to remind you again that any of the links that we have will be in our chat, and all the information that I'm discussing today will be on our website. So as was said, you know, you're coming to the university and maybe you haven't been able to get into grad housing, so you need off-campus housing. One step that you can take is to familiarize yourself with the area. As was said before, we have an interactive student housing map. This map, when you go into it, you'll be able to see the different areas of housing, and you'll be able to see how long it takes to walk or drive to campus. There's different ways that you can get to campus by the ION train or the Grand River Transit bus system. You can go through this, you can explore it, because it'll take routes all along the student housing areas, and they will take you into campus multiple times a day. So once you've familiarized yourself with the map and with the area, and you familiarize yourself with the bus and the train, you can look at different areas to find listings or housing areas that you want to move into. So I just want to let you know that the University of Waterloo has partnered with Places for Students. This company, it supports undergraduate, graduate students, postdoctoral scholars, and visiting scholars, and it gives a variety of different options for off-campus housing options. When you go to Places for Students, you're going to want to put the University of Waterloo as the school. And as you can see in this slide, it not only has rental listings, but it will help you to find roommates and also do sublets. So another thing that we want to make you aware of is that campus housing, it doesn't post listings, but what we do is we help to guide you on where you can find off-campus housing resources. And we also often recommend students connect with graduate coordinators to find out if there's anyone in their department that's also looking for housing or has a room or a unit available to rent. But besides Places for Students, there's also also other listing areas that you can look at, but they aren't affiliated with the campus housing. So some of those areas are rentals.ca, Kijiji, student-run Facebook housing groups, PadMapper, and there's other areas that you can look at too. So now the next step we can talk about is what you need to know before you rent. One thing we want to really talk about is roommates. So if you don't know the person that you are considering to be your roommate, you may want to do a video call or connect with them on social media. Once you've met them, it's advised that you would do like sit down and discuss with each other about what your expectations would be. So these expectations could be how many guests you're going to have, the use and cost of shared or personal items, how you're going to split up cleaning the shared areas, and what kind of noise you can expect. Now that you've found someone that you want to be your roommate with, you are going to look for listings for rentals. So when you find a listing rental, you want to check the legitimacy of the ad. You can do this by checking the address on Google Maps just to make sure that it's a real rental. And you can also look for reviews of renters, like the landlords or the rental companies. Just look for reviews to make sure that there's no red flags. So now I'm going to talk about the cost of housing and other expenses that you're going to have. So rent in Waterloo can range between $700 a month to $1,800 a month. It depends on many factors, such as how many roommates you're living with, the proximity to the campus, the age of the building, and other things like that. And one thing we want you to consider is utilities. So some landlords will include them in your rent fee, and some may include only one or two. If you are expected to pay for all your utilities, a piece of advice would be to ask the previous tenant if they can give you an average of what they were paying. If that's not possible, you can always reach out to the utility company to give you an average. And as was mentioned by Carrie, on our graduate studies and postdoctoral affairs page, we have the chart that lists different expenses that you're going to expect. So besides rent and utilities. So those are groceries, phone, recreation, clothing, those type of things that you can be aware of. And we also have the student budget calculator. So you can put all of this in and figure out a budget that will be working for you for your payments for the year. Next step is we want to talk about leases. So we strongly advise that you read all the documents that you're going to be signing. You read them from top to bottom. So what is a lease? A lease is a binding contract that grants the use or occupation of property during a specified period in exchange for specified rent. Typically, the lease could be 1 year in length. The lease should use easy to understand language, and it should help reduce illegal terms and also misunderstandings that can be caused by verbal tenancy agreements. On our website, we have a standardized lease agreement that you can download, and you can review this before you went to talk to the landlord, just to prepare yourself ahead of time. And also there's more information on our website that explains leases and what you can expect. So some tenant rights, we can talk about this. Please do not sign a lease before you see the unit. If you live too far away and you can't see the unit in person, it's great to ask someone that you know, that you trust, if they could view it for you. If not, you can request the landlord to give you a live video tour. Okay, so the next one is rent deposits. So a landlord may require a tenant to pay first and last month's rent prior to moving in. The last month's rent will serve as a deposit on that unit. In Ontario, a landlord may not ask for damage deposit. The first month's rent is not required until move-in. The student can provide a post-dated check for the landlord, but they are only required to pay last month's rent before you move in. So once you've moved in and you have maintenance concerns, say for example, your shower is broken and you want to get it fixed, this is the responsibility of the landlord. So according to the Residential Tenancies Act, a landlord is responsible for providing and maintaining a residential complex, including the rental units in it, a good state of repair and fit for habitation and for complying with health, safety, housing, and maintenance concerns. So if you do have problems with your shower and you want them fixed, a good idea is to write a letter to your landlord, give them a reasonable date of when the shower should be fixed. And if it isn't fixed by that date, then you can contact the landlord and tenant board. So now we can talk about what the landlord could expect or what you can expect from them. So the landlord can ask for references. They can ask for your first and last name, contact information. They can also ask to see identification. But please note there's no legal reason why a landlord would need copies or photos of your driver's license, your student ID, passport, social insurance number. So it's advised to never give out any personal information that you're not comfortable with discussing. If you're deciding that you're in a rental unit and you have a lease with them, but you're not happy with it and you want to break the lease, we want to tell you that once you've signed a lease, you are locked into that lease. You are responsible for carrying out your lease until the end of the term stated on your lease. If you're unhappy with your living situation, you can try to improve or change the situation instead of looking for another place to live. Because you have signed that lease, you are locked into it. On our website, we have information about safety. So it covers fire safety, personal security, and item safety. So we really recommend that you go through there and you look at these tips. Okay, so our last part is about the legal support. The University of Waterloo students, they can access free legal support. Waterloo Undergraduate Student Association and Waterloo Graduate Student, that was Waterloo Undergraduate Student Association and Waterloo Graduate Student Association have partnered with Student Care. They will provide legal advice on any subject and representation on issues relating to academic rights, co-op and employment, or housing and tenancy, and other matters. So a lot of this information that I talked about today can be found on our website, and that's at housing@uwaterloo.ca. And that is the end of my presentation.
All right, thanks, Jill. I'm just going to expand a little bit on the part you mentioned about the GSA, the Graduate Student Association. So that's on this slide here. So the GSA, once you have accepted your offer and you're going to be a student at Waterloo, the GSA also has lots of resources. So Jill mentioned that basically everything that she's talking about can be found on the housing and off-campus housing website. Just have to kind of dig around a little bit sometimes. But once you are a student, you can reach out to that GSA housing coordinator. So her name is Gianna, and her email address is up on the screen here, and maybe Graham could put it in the chat as well. And she will be able to also answer some of your specific questions. GSA representatives are all students as well. So, they also understand the position that you're in. And the GSA also does offer bi-weekly free legal clinics. Jill was mentioning that through the student care. So you can reach out to Gianna, and if you're having issues with leases or landlord or anything where you're not sure and might need legal advice, they have free legal clinics every other week. And also on the GSA housing page, which we'll share that link as well, there's also a ton of resources as well. Some of those are duplicated as to the off-campus housing resources we have on our website, but they also share a lot of information as well. So for current graduate students and students who are coming and going to be grad students, the Graduate Student Association is a great resource, and they will also be there to help and support you. So let's move into our Q&A. If I can get Jill and Maya to come back on the screen. I did see there was a couple people that said they were having problems copying and pasting the links. And some that were like, well, it takes you to another window. Once we send the recording out, all of the links, we will paste them in underneath. So you will be able to see like what slide they were on and be able to access them. But everything that we've shared here is also available on the campus housing. You see the URL for the campus housing website. And there's also a website for off-campus housing, which you can just search on our website. So none of them are secret. You can find them all online, but we will also have them available for easy access when we post the recording. So let's go back up. Actually, just off the top of my head, I do remember there were quite a few questions about folks asking if they're here for a short amount of time. So especially some of our Master of Social Work students, some of our other professional master's programs who may only need to be on campus for, you know, maybe 1 week for their whole program. So something that we do offer, we have short-term accommodations through United College. So that they used to be called St. Paul's, which can be a little bit confusing, but they recently changed their name to United College. They do offer short-term housing. So maybe Graham, if I could get you to share their website in the chat. So they have, oh, Maya, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I also did share, I answered a couple of these questions
Oh,
in
awesome.
the Q&A, and there is a specific link to all short-term accommodation options on campus.
Oh,
and
perfect.
It shows the on-campus and the ones that are affiliated with the university just off campus. So I highly recommend that.
Yeah, so that will also be, so there are, like, we have visiting scholars, sometimes they'll use that if they need to stay for maybe more than a week, even a month. Sometimes people just staying for a night or two can use those. There's also the option for summer accommodation in some of our undergraduate residences. However, that is only available until August 28th, because then they convert over and we have undergraduate students arriving. So if you did want to come, you know, and look for housing in the summer and you wanted to stay in the undergraduate housing, that is something that you can do for a night, a couple nights, a week. And again, we do have the links to where you can find info about all the short-term and temporary housing that we have available. So those are a good option. Again, if you only need to be on campus for a short amount of time, or if you want to come in advance and look around and sort of do, you know, be here for a week and do a housing search or something. So I think that should hopefully answer that question for folks. So we have a question. This was earlier on. If somebody had applied for grad housing at CLV, when should I expect a response to know if they have a room? And they're saying, but should they start planning for off-campus housing in the meantime? Maya, maybe you can take that one.
I've been responding and answering to some of these questions. There's a number of the same question, but I did some data analysis and I was able to send offers to about 50% of the students who applied for last fall. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of like how many students were interested. So we do really recommend looking off campus. In terms of timing, you'll hear from us starting mid-May for our first rounds of offers, and actually we'll continue sending offers right up into move-in, because as I mentioned, people cancel, people choose to terminate their contracts. I even did send a couple of offers last year, like in the middle of September, because we had students who had contracts and then weren't able to travel for whatever reason. So it could come at any time. I know that that's not the most useful answer, but it is a true answer.
Thanks, Maya. This was another question we had earlier on. This was about United College. If all graduate students at Waterloo are eligible to live at United College, I believe yes. I'm pretty sure that's the case. Do you know, Maya?
I unfortunately don't. I would highly recommend contacting them, and I suspect that it is true what you're saying.
Yeah, I believe it is true. It's they have even smaller for full-time grad housing. They have even smaller capacity than, like, they have tiny. They really don't have a lot of space. And I believe they probably do prioritize the students who are affiliated with them, I would imagine. But again, I would encourage checking out the info on their website and reaching out to them as well. We have a question. Do leases for CLV North and South start only at the start of each term, or can they start during a term?
So graduate housing, as we discussed, generally like 99% of the offers are going to get sent so that they cover the entirety of the term. So like, let's say for fall term, the dates are September 1st to December 29th. Now, as I mentioned, sometimes we have students who have a contract who never show up. And so I might send an offer to you for like part of the way through September, but that's just because of when the room became available, and it would still go to the end of the term. Generally, when students are asking this question, they're asking because they're like, well, I actually only need housing for like November, December. Unfortunately, we don't really do that. That is a situation where I would suggest looking at short-term housing or sublets.
Great, thanks, Maya. How about pets? Are pets allowed in on-campus housing?
Great question. The blanket answer is no for graduate housing, unless you have a medical need to have a support animal or an animal, a support animal. I mentioned this in a couple of answers to questions through the chat, but there's something called the accessible housing process. And if you have any sort of medical need that would require you to have a change in your accommodation or assignment, you need to go through that process. So as long as we get all of the required documentation in, we will do our best to find something that suits you. This is all true for graduate housing. For family housing, yes, pets are allowed, period.
Awesome. A question about roommate situations for CLV South, for example. If you apply by yourself as a female, would it be co-ed? And how does that sort of work with co-ed or not?
Fantastic question. It's completely up to you. So when you apply, there's a question that specifically asks if you are open to living with different students of different genders. So if you say no to that question, you will not get placed, and you're a female, you will not get placed with a male. If, however, you want to request a roommate of a different gender and you have a roommate in mind, you have to say yes to that question, because otherwise our system is going to be like, no, you can't invite Tom as your roommate. You said you didn't want to live with boys.
Awesome. Thanks, Maya. This is a question. Someone asked if they can pay their housing fees from their funding, from their grad student funding. I'm not sure of the answer to this question. Do you happen to know, Maya?
I have a strong suspicion. Okay, so there's two pieces that you will have to pay. The first piece is a deposit, which is I'm speaking for graduate housing right now, and this would only apply to graduate housing, what I'm saying. So your deposit is a $500 non-refundable deposit that you have to pay by credit card or certified check. You would not be able to pay that with your funding. I am pretty sure you could pay the rest of your fees with your funding, but you'd have to go through the promissory note process, which there's more information about that on the registrar's office page.
Yeah, and for the person who asked that question, if you want to send in an email to the housing address, and then Jill, you could forward that one to me, and I can look into that. I can talk to the funding folks in our office and then get you an answer on that if you'd like some follow-up. Awesome. Someone's asking, this is again for living on campus, if you can apply as a grad don and how that works.
Yes, you absolutely can. It's a little bit different than with the undergraduates. So with the undergraduates, when they apply to be a don, if they get accepted, then they get housing. In the graduate community, you have to have an offer to live with us to be a don, but you can still apply while you're waiting to find out if you're going to get an offer to live with us.
And let's just reiterate this one. Are there options for part-time graduate students?
No.
No,
I hate
unfortunately.
to say it, but the mandate of the university for university housing is to prioritize housing for full-time enrolled students.
Yep. Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case. Someone is asking, this is a great question, about our Waterloo Grad Ready program and what's the timeline for that, and will it help to meet other grad students and potentially roommates? So Grad Ready usually, so if we're talking about the fall, some Grad Ready information will kick off in June, usually mid-June, and they'll send you sort of a schedule of like, here's everything we're talking about. They do a housing webinar in July, I believe, but I know for a lot of people that is too late to start looking for housing. So it's kind of right on the edge, because by the time you're sort of full swing into grad ready, it'll be August, which if you're wanting housing for September it's going to be a little bit late. So I would say in terms of I mean, grad ready is a great way to meet people and get connected, but probably the timing for that won't be great for September. But that being said, on the Places for Students website, there is the Find a Roommate posting board, so you can post there as well, and that could be a way. Another thing too could be reach out to your graduate coordinator. There may be some like incoming grad student groups in your department or your program that they could connect you with. So yeah, thanks for that question.
Can I hop in, Carrie? Because I saw a question that I would love to answer because I get this question a lot.
Oh yeah, go for it.
So the question is can I withdraw when I get a housing offer, if I accept it, can I cancel it without losing my fees and still being responsible? This is a really good question. So when you apply, you have no financial obligations. You're just telling us you're interested. We'll send you an offer. And at that point, if you choose to accept it, you have to pay a $500 deposit that is non-refundable, period, full stop. So if you at any point afterwards decide to cancel your housing, that deposit is gone. Now, whether or not you're responsible for the remainder of your fees for the full term of your contract will be dependent on why you're canceling. And generally, the only reason that you would be not responsible for your fees is if you are withdrawing from the university. So like UW rescinded your offer, you deferred your offer, you chose to withdraw. So generally, like when you sign a contract, and then this again goes back to what Jill was saying, read the fine print. So like when you accept a contract, you are financially committing to pay the fees for the term of that contract.
Yep, that's really really great info, Maya. Somebody's asking about parking at is there parking at CLV North and South, and is there fees?
There is parking at CLV North and South. The fees are paid separately through parking services because not all students want parking on campus. You can go to the parking page on UW and inquire, and you would be looking at a parking pass for the CLV community.
And if someone was wanting to move into grad housing, could they share a room with a girlfriend or boyfriend or partner of any kind in graduate housing, or does that have to be family housing?
Yeah, so graduate housing, no. One person per room, it's a single bed. You don't want to share it.
And even if you did want to, you can't, unfortunately.
You can't. There are some options here. So if you're both registered students, you could apply to be put together as roommates into the same townhouse. So you could be in a two-bedroom unit, you're each in one unit. If you've been dating long enough to be considered common law, then you can apply for family housing. But unfortunately, like if I had been dating my partner for like a month and a half and they weren't a UW student, there's no way for us to live together on campus.
Yeah, I think that also answers another question we had about if you have to have kids for family housing, which no, as long as you're common law or married. And in Ontario, common law is after 1 year of living together. Is that correct?
I want to say that's true.
Yeah.
And this is all on our family eligibility page. And unfortunately, just an extra piece of information to be aware of, you will have to get a notarized document stating that you're common law, and you'll have to show us some proof that you've been living together for a year. So like a signed lease, a utility bill, something like that.
Yep. Question, this is one maybe a little bit of sharing some bad news, but someone's saying, they're starting in the fall looking for family housing, and so are they saying, does that mean there's no way to get on campus housing for the fall as a family?
as a family, if you're not like under number 20 on the wait list, it's not happening. And I hate this part of my job that I have to say that to people. Some of the things that we recommend, so you can send us an email. I have a little resource sheet on looking for housing for dependents, like when you have a family. We highly recommend talking to the Grad Studies Postdoctoral Affairs Office because they have some support for housing. Talk to the GSA, they have support for helping finding housing. And the other thing that people underestimate is talk to your graduate program coordinator. Oftentimes, like I was a grad student at UW, people would often send emails out to our department being like, I have a new graduate student coming into our lab. They're looking for a house. This is like the information. Does anyone know of anything that's available? Because when you come into your department, that's a community that you can tap in to for support, and they're already settled here. So some of them might have a room available. They might be a landlord themselves and have a house that they're looking to rent. So reach out to all the avenues that you can.
Yep, those are great advice, Maya. Someone's asking, is Kitchener near campus, and is it convenient to commute from Kitchener to campus? Yes. So Kitchener-Waterloo, while they're separate cities, they are literally like attached. There's no like separation. You wouldn't know if you were just walking. So you can walk from one to the other in probably 20 minutes. They do have separate downtown. So in Waterloo, it's called Uptown Waterloo, which is actually the downtown, a little bit confusing. But Uptown Waterloo is sort of the main part of Waterloo, and then downtown Kitchener, and the LRT, so that rapid transit, basically like it goes along, it's called King Street, that goes sort of right in the middle of Kitchener and Waterloo, and the LRT connects them, and it's like, I don't know, 4 stops or something like that. And again, probably a 20-minute walk if you were walking it. Again, Kitchener is a bigger place though, obviously, than just King Street, and so is Waterloo. So really important to check the bus routes as well. So if you're not along the LRT, obviously there are, and the LRT extends farther out into Kitchener as well. So, you know, you could take a 20-minute LRT ride to get to campus. I know often like Google Maps, if you put in the location and then like of where you're looking for housing and then put in the campus location, and then you go for transit directions, like you can select directions for public transit, it will give you the options. So it might suggest, oh, maybe a bus route is faster, and it'll show you approximately how long it can take at what time of day. So highly recommend using all of those resources. But yes, Kitchener is fairly close. I live in Kitchener. I ride my bike to work. And for me, it's about a 15-minute ride. So pretty close. Let's see. Are there any restrictions related to check-in times and
Ooh, this is a
dates
good
for
question.
CLV North and South? Yeah, like is there like curfews or weird things on the weekend, that kind of thing?
No curfews in general for like student activity or anything like that. Although, you know, like be respectful noise-wise of your other residents. But in terms of arriving, your contract for graduate housing and for family housing is going to start on the 1st of the month. And our office is manned as of 8 a.m. So on move-in day, the first day of the month, you can arrive as early as 8 a.m. If you were to arrive at like 4 a.m., no one's going to be there to give you your keys, unfortunately. And then we go until midnight. So if you're arriving within those hours, that's easy, that's simple. One thing I want to just make a note of is, unfortunately, we cannot accommodate early arrivals. So if you're like, I'm flying in on the 29th, but my contract starts on the 1st, we can't help. We have current students in those rooms until that day. And then we only have a 2-day period, not even full 48 hours, to clean all of the rooms in between students. What you can do is, again, look at those short-term accommodations. If you know that you're arriving like at like 4 a.m., send us an email. We can connect you with the residence life staff that are going to be on campus, because there's always a Dawn on duty. So if we know that we have a student coming in at a really bizarre time, we can have that student ready. You can have the phone number and give them a call when you arrive. So we can support kind of like, my plane gets in at 2 a.m. I'm not going to get to Waterloo till 4 a.m. Just make sure to send us an email.
Yep, good. We did have some, I saw, you probably saw those questions. We had a couple about the early check-in. So yeah, thanks for addressing that. Someone's asking about estimate an apartment, a 2-bedroom off-campus housing, off-campus apartment, sorry, average price. Really hard to say, as Jill mentioned, and Jill, feel free to jump in. It really depends. So if the closer you are to campus, the more expensive it's
expensive,
going
yep.
to be. Yeah. And also some places in Waterloo, if you're close to the downtown areas, it's always going to be a bit more expensive. Unfortunately, that's just always how it goes. You know, the closer you are to good transit options, it's always a little bit more expensive. But then, you know, you have to balance that. Like then you probably don't need a car. So then you won't have those, you know, those expenses as well. So it's always a bit of a balance, but you know, I'd say 2-bedroom, they can go anywhere from like $1,500 to over $2,000 a month. Like it can just, so it's hard to really give an average price because it really depends like what area you're in, how close you are to campus, how close you are to transit. But again, like if you want to be on the rapid transit on the LRT line, you can look a little further out from campus and still have convenient transportation. And again, if you're looking at a new building, so there are a lot of you know, there's been a lot of housing, well, a boom here, I would say, in the last like 5 years. Waterloo Region's a really popular area, lots of people moving here, lots of development. There's a ton of new condominium buildings and new apartment buildings. So the brand new ones are typically quite a bit more expensive than some of the older ones. And usually you can tell, like they'll be, you know, you can tell by the pictures of the listings, like, you know, brand new kitchens, all that kind of thing. So yeah, I know that wasn't really an answer. I don't know, Jill, if you have anything you want to add, but
I agree with you. It's hard to tell. It depends on the area.
someone is asking about looking for off-campus housing near the if they're studying architecture, so the campus in Cambridge. So they've already tried Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace, places for students. They haven't had any luck.
Those are the only options that we have for resources.
I would say this person, they asked, the question was 11:45, so a little bit ago. So if you're still online, it's the way leases work in Ontario for, like, we're talking about ones that are just general housing, like not related to the university, is people need to give 60 days notice, typically when they're leaving somewhere. So if you're looking now for the fall, there can be some, especially like if you're looking on places for students, because they are advertising to students, they will have availability now for the fall. But if you're just looking on Kijiji or Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, I don't know if Craigslist is still a thing. It depends on the country you're in. It will really depend on when you're looking. So if you're looking now, there aren't going to be a lot of listings on Kijiji for September. They will start to come up probably June, July. And I know that's tough because you want to be able to find a place now. But that's just unfortunately the way it works. Most of the time in Ontario, tenants have to give 60 days notice, and then that's when a landlord will advertise a place. So I hope that answers your question. So keep your eyes open in the next few months. You will start to hopefully see more listings pop up, kind of that mid-June, July for September vacancies.
And also places for students, they are constantly updating their listings. So whenever they get new ones in, they will upload them to the site. So I would keep looking all the time because you never know what will come up.
Yep, for sure. Someone's saying they're an international student. They don't really, you know, they are new to the area. Are international students given any preference over domestic students for housing?
I wish I could say yes. Unfortunately, that's not currently the policy. I absolutely understand why that could be or should be a thing. And going back to what Jill was talking about with looking for off-campus housing as an international student, like be really wary. Reach out to all the support that you can. So your program coordinator, the GSA at UW can really be a fantastic way to like vet places and to get support in your housing search. I really, really recommend them. They're so fantastic. And you are a member, so take advantage of those opportunities that are out there.
Yep. Again, yep. The GSAs, the Graduate Student Association, definitely connect with them. Great advice. Hold on, there was one that I just saw I wanted to answer. I think I just sort of did. They're wondering about traveling to Waterloo or starting to look online. And as I think I mentioned, there won't be a ton, like there will be some on places for students, but on other off campus, there won't be a ton until the summer that will show up there. So if you have the resources, like both time and financial resources, like it's not going to put you out too much. It can't hurt to come in person in the summer to look for a place. That can be a really good thing. We totally understand that that's not possible for a lot of people, again, due to time and resources and just travel time. But you can start looking online, and more will be available in the summertime. So I hope that helps. So much about having access to bus services as part of our student fees. Can we access these buses anywhere off campus? Yes. So that's for all of Grand River Transit is the name of like the transit that covers the whole region. So yes, it covers the rapid transit, it covers buses. Well, that's all we have. So things that are part of Grand River Transit. So I think earlier in the presentation, Graham might have put that link in. It's GRT.ca, or you Google Grand River Transit, and that will show you, you'll have access to all of the transit maps there, and you'll be able to see where you can go. And that is included in your student fees. Let's see. So some people are talking about their wait list numbers, asking about how do I know where I am on the wait list? Because some people seem to know. How do they find this out?
Yes, so if you are on the family, like if you have a family housing application, you can check your number by going into the application portal. If you are on the graduate student housing wait list, unfortunately, there is no way to check your number. And generally, like you may want to know your number, but it's a little bit more complicated in the sense that, like sometimes we have a space available for a female. So someone later than you on the wait list, if you're a male, might get offered an offer and like what you prefer to be placed in. So there's a number of factors. So we don't actually share your waitlist number with you for graduate housing. If you have not already applied, the chances are very low that you will get sent an offer for fall for graduate housing, unfortunately.
Yeah, which we know is frustrating, because I know a lot of you have just received offers really recently, still trying to figure things out. But yeah, with the limited housing, unfortunately, that's just how it is. But Maya's advice about applying in other terms, like if you're still, you probably will have found something off campus by that time, but if you're still wanting to get into off-campus housing, is applying in other terms. And as she said, then once you're in, then you'll be able to stay in. Can you apply for both CLV North and South? Are those separate applications, Maya?
Oh, good question. So for graduate housing, it's one application for a term. So you can tell us whether you prefer North over South. You'll rank them on your application, but you only need to apply once. What I will make sure to clarify, though, is that if you're interested in winter housing, that's a separate application. So that will open in early October. So if you don't end up getting, as Carrie said, a housing offer for fall, and you're still looking, in early October, be sure to watch the housing website page, and you can go in and submit an application. And again, like we will generally have the ability to, I think in the fall last year, I was sending offers to about 50% of the students who applied. In winter, I was able to send offers to like 75, 80% of the students who applied. So you've got a better chance in the winter. And actually for the spring term, like that we're in right now, I have sent offers to every student who applied, and they all got their first choice. So spring is the best time.
Thanks, Maya. Are people allowed to have visitors, like if they have friends from another campus, or are you allowed to have visitors in your room at all?
So generally, this is all like my answers to every question are different family to graduate housing. So family housing, we don't have any oversight on your visitors or who you're having around, because the whole unit is yours. In graduate housing, I highly recommend going onto the campus housing website and going to the terms and conditions page and reading it closely. There are very specific rules. Generally, yes, you can have visitors, but there is a definition of what a visitor is. And I'm not going to be able to quote it verbatim, but something like, they stay for short term, less than, like one night in a week. They don't generally eat in your unit, like things like that, because again, you want to be aware and
considerate.
That's the right word, Jill. Consider it to your roommates.
Yeah, for sure. A couple of questions about transportation from the airports. There's a couple specifically about Toronto. I believe, and I'd have to double check this information, but I think there is, like, right around move-in time, there is a service offered through Waterloo International.
Yeah,
Is
there
it-
was a service where they went to the airport and picked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm
the
trying to
students.
remember where we can find that information. It's very specific times though. But otherwise, one thing I will say is that the transport to Toronto Airport is the public transport options are not amazing. So there are private ones. There's one called Airways Transit. But there is a charge. You'll have to pay to and from, like, quite a bit. I think it's over $100, so it's not cheap. There are a couple other private options as well, and of course taxis, but those are also, you're looking in the $100 plus range. I'm trying to think, there's that bus, FlixBus. I don't know if it goes to the airport.
I don't know.
You
can do like a terrible thing where you take what's called the Union Pearson Express, which is a little train into downtown Toronto, and then you could take the GO train or a GO bus to Waterloo. It's like, if this is the general pathway from the airport to Waterloo, you would be doing airport down to Toronto over to Waterloo. It's not ideal.
So on our website, on the International Student Guide, it says that for the fall 2023 term, they're still finalizing the plans. We'll share information to eligible undergraduate and graduate students through our pre-arrival communications in June and July.
Oh,
So
awesome.
keep an eye
Thanks
on
for
that.
looking that up, Jill.
Yeah.
So if you are eligible for that, I keep an eye on your email in June, July, and there will be information about that. Maya?
Yeah. Sorry.
Or Jill? Sorry,
I was
go ahead.
just gonna say on there, it has Airways Transit and GO Transit. It has the information on that site.
Awesome. Yeah, Maya, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple of things I want to address because I've seen them come up a couple of times. So one, really important to be aware of, the maximum occupancy of a family housing unit is 4. And that's just based on like legal fire requirements. So if you are a family larger than 4, unfortunately, we cannot accommodate you in on-campus housing. I understand how difficult that is when you have a larger family to find housing, but our units just aren't large enough. So that was one. The other is I've had some questions about, can I live with a parent in family housing? And so if you are the student, the only way you could apply for family housing with another family member who is not a spouse or your child is if you can show that they are financially dependent on you. The person who's holding the family housing contract needs to be like at the center of the family unit, and like anyone else needs to be reliant on them or married to them.
Yep, for sure. Good information. Another question had about parking. I was just typing an answer. Yes, there is parking available. You have to go through parking services. So it's a separate agreement for that. I've had a couple questions about fees. If they're paid, like how they're paid termly. I know the family housing ones are paid monthly. And for graduate housing, they're paid every term. So every 4 months, right there. So then the fees on the website, I think there were some questions about, are they showing per term, or how are those showed?
On the graduate housing website, the fees are per term. That's going to cover everything unless you opt into a meal plan, unless you opt into parking. And then I just had a question that I was typing an answer to. There is optional, like you can pay for laundry extra in the community center. So the fee that's on there needs to be paid before the term starts, like by the fees arranged deadline, and it's for the whole term for graduate housing.
Great, thanks, Maya. Someone's saying if they receive an offer for graduate housing, but they haven't specified anything about roommates, will that info be shared prior to
Ooh, great question.
accepting the offer, or will they only know once they've paid a deposit?
Really good question. So when you fill out your application, you have the opportunity to tell us if you want to share your email address with any potential roommates. And so you will, no matter what, when you're assigned a unit, on your offer, if you scroll down, it will show anybody else listed in your suite. And if they've said yes to that email question, it will even include their contact email. If they said no to their email question, it's probably because they don't want to be contacted ahead of time. So just like, don't contact us to ask for it because we're not going to be able to give it to you. I would say though, that students can change. So like the students who are assigned to your room can change. They could cancel their offer. They could like need to get moved for a medical reason. So keep an eye on that because that information can change over time.
Yep. So Maya, can you just reiterate again for us? I know you have a few times, but I think we're still having this question coming in. I think it's good to repeat it. What are the odds that they could get accepted if they're only applying now for grad housing?
Not good. Like,
Yeah.
look off campus, look off campus.
Yep. But again, reminder, a lot of those off-campus listings are not going to be coming up until June, July. On Places for Students, there will be some now for the fall because they have a partnership with us. They're catering specifically for students. But when you're looking on other sites that aren't affiliated, as we've said, Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace, rentals.ca, PadMapper. Again, these are all, you can find them on our off-campus housing website. A lot of the listings for fall will not come up until that June, July period. And again, that's a busy time, lots of people looking for housing, but that's just a tip for that. Someone saying that their on-campus housing is their only, or an international student, they only want on-campus housing. Unfortunately, yeah, there is no way to guarantee that you get a room, as Maya said.
I know I'm saying, and I'm being kind of negative just because I want you guys to make sure you have other options. There's also no harm in applying. Like, yeah, you can still, like, you can apply for campus housing and then go look off campus. And if you find somewhere off campus, great. Like, there's no obligation that you've signed up for to apply. So there's no harm in it if you're still unsure of your housing.
Yep, for sure. There's a question that just came in too about choices in meal plans and variations in cuisines, because some international students might not really be used to food in another country, and sort of what's that like?
So there are so one thing to keep in mind, any of the on-campus housing today that we've been talking about is up in our community, Columbia Lake Village. There is no campus eateries there. So if you want to opt into a meal plan, you totally can, but just be aware that it's not going to be the most convenient. It's going to be like a 10 to 15 minute walk to the closest on-campus food eatery. So in terms of what your restrictions are or your preferences are, there are a lot of different international food options on campus. It's actually wonderful. If you have specific dietary needs, like halal, like vegan, like gluten-free, any of those things, we do have offerings for all of those needs. We also have a dietitian that you can reach out to who specifically deals with helping students with specific nutritional needs manage eating through the cafeteria system. If you feel like it's not going to meet your needs, that's totally fine. The great thing about all the graduate housing units is they have kitchens. So you always have that opportunity to completely say, no, thanks, I don't want a meal plan. I just want to cook for myself.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And that just sort of piggybacking, somebody asked if there's the food charges are over and above. And yes, if you wanted to do a meal plan, that is over and above the campus housing charges.
And if you say on your application that you want a meal plan, we will send you an offer for housing and a meal plan. If you said you didn't want a meal plan and later you decide you do, you can still sign up for that separately. So you have options. You don't have to like lock into it right away.
Yep. Oh, I just saw, this is sort of an information might be useful, came in through the chat from someone else. They said they just called United College about a short-term stay if you need a week at the end of August, and unfortunately they're full. Which also, well, what is it? We're mid-March. Yeah, so we did share, and I don't know, Graham, if you still have that handy, if you could share the page that's the options for all short-term accommodation. and summer accommodation, that might be helpful to give some other options. So yeah, I know that that's probably not helpful for those folks who are, looking for that very last week of August, but there
That
are.
last week of August, you may find availability with the campus housing summer accommodations, but I would recommend booking that soon because we also tend to see all of the varsity teams usually start their training a couple weeks early. So they tend to book up a lot of the summer accommodations at the end of August. So get on that now if you already know.
Oh, that's good to know. I didn't even think of that.
You can also check out Conrad Grable summer accommodations. That's on the list too on that short-term accommodations.
Oh,
Or Saint,
awesome.
yeah, that's United. Yeah, and summer
Yep.
accommodations.
Awesome. Thanks, Jill.
Yep.
We've had a couple of questions about the enrolling in Duo. So the instructions for that will all be, so once you accept your offer, then you will get the instructions for how to do that. So that should be in your follow-up communications. If you're still having trouble, if you could email admissions, Graham, maybe you could put this in the chat, admissions@uwaterloo.ca. They can also help you out with that because yes, you do need that to do the application. So somebody's asking, what is the contact for summer accommodations? You're gonna have to check that page because they're all, there isn't like one person, they're all separate entities. So you do have to go through sort of on a one-by-one basis.
And the short-term accommodation site has the number on there and the email.
Yep.
For it too.
Yep. Someone said, we'll reiterate this. They said, is there any way to find roommates for off-campus housing? The Places for Students, which is the one that's affiliated with the University of Waterloo for off-campus housing, the Places #4students.com. They have a find a roommate section there, so that can be a good resource for that. What else? Let's see if there's anything. We're just coming up onto the end of our time here, but I want to see if there are any that we haven't answered yet. Someone said, what is the best airport to fly into Toronto or Waterloo? Oh, wow, you already answered that.
I love the Waterloo Airport. If you can fly there, it's a wonderful experience. It's so small and calm. You walk like right out immediately. And the transportation from there, you'll need to go privately through like a taxi, but it will be much cheaper to get to campus than it would from Pearson because Pearson is way farther away.
Yep. Let's see. We answered this one. Somebody said they had accepted their offer a while back, but haven't received info about student ID and authentication. Yeah, definitely check in your follow-up email and then reach out to us, whether it be to the admissions@uwaterloo.ca for that. Yeah, we talked about wait lists. So I just want to make sure that we're catching everything in our last couple of minutes here. Somebody said that they're talking about their grad program is mainly online, but they have to be here for 2 weeks in person, 1 week in August, 1 week at the end. So I think that's where we addressed the housing for that you'd have to go through short-term accommodations. So that short-term accommodation page is where you're going to want to check. So yeah, you wouldn't actually apply for on-campus or off-campus housing for that because it's correct. They are either by month or by term for those ones. Let's see. So we had a couple about popular real estate ads web platforms, which I think we've mentioned a few times. And we do have a link. So one of the links we shared, and again, these will all be available afterwards too. It shows like Kijiji, rentals.ca, PadMapper. What are some other ones off the top of my head?
There's Icon.
Yeah, we do have them all listed
you.
too, right,
Yeah.
Jill? Yeah, accommodate you.
When you go to the off-campus website, if you look at the looking for a place and then scroll down and will say additional off-campus housing options. And then it has more than what we provided today.
Someone is asking, when will the recording be posted? In the next couple of days, just once I get it up on the website, and then you guys will get an email with it. Someone's mentioning they've been looking around for some and they found 2 bedrooms for about 2,000 Canadian. Unfortunately,
Sounds
that's
about
not,
right.
yeah, that's not unusual. That definitely, like, especially if it's in a condo that's a little newer, that so you're going to be paying about $1,000 per person, but that is sort of within that range of $800 to $1,800 a month that you yourself personally could be paying.
Per room per person. So like that's not for a 2-bedroom unit. That's for 1 bedroom probably in that unit.
Yeah. So if you're looking, if it's like just you and, you know, if you're, say you're sharing, you found a house and you're sharing, it's like a 5 or 6 bedroom house or something, maybe you're only paying $600, $700, $800 a month, depending. But if you're looking to live by yourself and it's like a newer building and a 1 bedroom, you're easily looking at 1,500, 16, 17, 18. It just depends where you are, depends how new the building is. Yeah, so unfortunately, sometimes it is that expensive. Someone says, does this 3-term fall, spring, winter cover the full year, or do they need to find a place for the summer?
So each term is a separate contract, but if you have a spring contract, so you can either apply for a spring contract, or for example, if you were living with us in the winter, you would get offered a spring contract, you can stay. So generally, like every time you sign a contract, there's going to be dates associated with that contract, like a start and an end. Between those dates, you're fully entitled to live with us, to stay in your room. As soon as those dates have like finished, you no longer can stay. So again, going back to read the fine print, and same thing with off campus, like read the fine print, make sure you know, and don't expect that your landlord is going to be like really generous and you're like, oh, I need to come. And they're like, oh, totally. No, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
All right, well, we are coming up to the end of our time. Thank you everyone for asking your questions. I hope that you aren't feeling too discouraged. I know that we probably weren't able to give you all every answer that you wanted, but we do want to acknowledge, like, we know it's a challenge. But again, I wanted to reiterate that Maya and Jill and their team are here to offer you support. Especially as well as us in GSPA, the Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs, and the Graduate Student Association. They are really great resources and will be there to support you, so you don't have to feel like you are alone in your search. So just have to try and stay positive and keep at it, and we will help and support you as much as you can. So again, if you do have more questions, please send us a note and we will try to answer them and help you out. So again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Maya. Thank you, Jill, for sharing your expertise. And we hope to see you on campus in the fall.
Bye.
Bye.